backhoe was already in my yard when I opened the curtains. Not parked near it. Not idling at the curb. In my yard. The steel bucket had ripped a wet, ugly mouth through the flower beds my mother planted with me the summer before she died. And the orange machine kept jerking forward with that grinding hydraulic scream like it had every right in the world to chew through my land. For a second, I honestly couldn't breathe. I just stood there barefoot on the cold wood floor, heart hammering so hard it made my vision pulse, staring at chunks of black soil flying across the morning light. Then I saw the white sign staked into my lawn. Temporary construction area, Laurel Creek HOA, and I said out loud to an empty kitchen, "Oh, you have got to be kidding me." I ran outside in sweatpants and an Old Navy t-shirt, not even thinking, just moving. The grass was cold and soaked with dawn dew under my feet. The air smelled like wet dirt, diesel, and the sweet crushed stems of peonies that had been alive 10 minutes earlier. One of the workers looked up when he heard me yell, but he didn't shut the machine down. He actually looked at me, then at the woman standing near the property line in sunglasses and a cream-colored puffer vest, and waited for her signal. Her name was Celeste Harrow, president of the Laurel Creek Homeowners Association, queen of fake smiles and paper authority. And there she was with a clipboard tucked to her chest like this whole thing was a school field trip. "Turn it off," I shouted. "Turn it off right now." Celeste didn't even flinch. "Good morning, Anthony. Good morning? Good morning?" My yard was being gutted before breakfast, and she hit me with good morning. I stopped just short of the trench because the bucket swung again and slammed into the earth with a damp metallic thud. Mud splashed my shins. I pointed straight at the operator. "Kill the engine." He hesitated. Celeste lifted one manicured hand. "You can pause for a minute, Daryl." Pause, like they were taking a coffee break from destroying my property. The engine settled into a growling idle. I could hear birds in the trees now, frantic and confused, their chirps cutting through the machine noise like tiny alarms. My entire side yard looked wounded already. 3 azalea bushes were uprooted. The low stone border around the garden path was broken open. The old copper wind spinner my niece loved had been snapped in half and lay in the mud like a dead thing. "What the hell is this?" I asked, though I already knew. I knew the tone. I knew the arrogance. I knew what this was really about. Celeste adjusted her sunglasses. "This is Phase 1 of the Community Enhancement Plan approved at last Thursday's board meeting." My laugh came out wrong. Too sharp, almost like a cough. "My yard is not your community enhancement plan." She gave me that tight little smile people use when they want to sound patient while being cruel. "The proposed pool and leisure terrace require slight grading access through this strip." "This strip," I repeated. "This strip is my property. It sits adjacent to common use land." "No," I snapped, stepping closer. "It sits adjacent to your common use land. That is not the same thing." She flipped a page on her clipboard. "Our records." "I don't care what your records say." She kept going anyway. "Show an easement zone and utility access corridor that makes this section available for improvement." Available for improvement. Jesus, the phrases these people used. They could bulldoze a church and call it aesthetic optimization. I looked beyond her and finally saw the spray paint marks. Neon orange lines curved across the side of my yard in a wide oval, like the ghost outline of something obscene. A pool. They were laying out a pool. Not a small one either. Not some little community splash pad. A full in-ground resort-style pool with a deck area that would cut deep into the side of my lot and come within feet of my porch. And the worst part? They had started at sunrise. Hoping I'd wake up after the damage was done enough to make reversing it too costly. That was Celeste all over. Aggression dressed as procedure. "You're trespassing," I said. "Every person here is trespassing. We sent notices. I got a flyer about a pool concept sketch for the clubhouse lot. That is not the same as permission to excavate my land." She tilted her head. "Anthony, please don't make this theatrical." The audacity of that sentence. The way the diesel fumes mixed with the smell of torn roses. The soft scrape of the bucket settling in the mud. The sound of my own blood pounding in my ears. Something in me went very, very still. "My mother's garden is in that dirt," I said, quieter now. You need to get your people off my property before I call the police. Celeste crossed her arms. You may do what you feel you need to do. That did it. I pulled out my phone with shaking fingers and called 911 standing right there in front of her. I gave the address. I said a construction crew was actively excavating private property without consent. I said HOA involvement. I said probable civil dispute but active trespass and destruction. While I was speaking, Celeste actually turned and murmured to one of the contractors as if I were a mosquito buzzing somewhere behind her head. The police came faster than I expected. Maybe because this neighborhood had a reputation. Maybe because Laurel Creek had generated enough complaint calls over the years that dispatch recognized the address. 2 officers arrived, and the younger one took one look at the trench, the broken landscaping, me covered in mud, and Celeste standing there like she was about to unveil a ribbon-cutting ceremony, and his eyebrows climbed high enough to disappear into his cap. We all talked at once for a minute. Celeste insisted there was an easement. I said there wasn't. The contractor said he had been hired by the HOA and assumed everything was cleared. One of the officers asked for documents. Celeste produced a folder immediately, of course. I had nothing on me but my phone and a chest full of fury. And that, right there, is when panic first slipped under my skin. Because I knew she was wrong. I knew this land was mine. I knew where my survey stakes were, knew where I had walked this property with the previous owner, knew what the closing packet said. But knowing and proving in the moment, those are 2 different animals. One lives in your bones. The other needs paper. The officers said it looked civil unless there was clear evidence of criminal intent or obvious fraud. They ordered work paused until ownership could be verified. Celeste protested. I nearly laughed in her face when the older officer told her, "Ma'am, if this man says you're digging up his yard and you can't prove otherwise on the spot, then the safest thing is nobody digs another inch today. Nobody digs another inch today." It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was oxygen. When the machines finally shut down completely, the sudden silence felt eerie. No engine growl, no beeping reverse alarm. Just wind moving through the pine trees and the soft drip of mud from the bucket teeth. My yard looked mutilated. I kept staring at the trench as if I could somehow unmake it with enough hate. Celeste gathered her papers, expression clipped and offended, and before she left she said, "You're delaying a project that benefits 216 residents." I looked at her, really looked at her. You dug through my dead mother's roses for a pool. For the first time, something flickered behind her sunglasses. Not guilt, never guilt. Irritation, maybe, discomfort. The annoyance of being reminded that dirt is not abstract when someone has memories buried in it. Then she left. I spent the rest of that morning taking photos with a kind of numb obsession. Every gouge, every uprooted plant, the cracked stones, the snapped irrigation line, tire tracks pressed across the side lawn, orange paint marks, footprints, the sign. I recorded video and narrated it because my voice was the only thing keeping me from breaking apart. This is the north bed. These were my mother's peonies. This trench is approximately 14 feet. From the porch rail, this was all intact at 6:30 last night. I sounded strange, too calm, then suddenly shaky, then calm again. Like someone pretending to be the version of himself who knew what to do. By noon, I had driven to the county records office. If you've never walked into a county land records building while furious and half covered in dried mud, let me tell you, people notice. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The place smelled like copier toner, old paper, stale air conditioning, and rain tracked in by other shoes. I went straight to the clerk's counter and asked for every recorded plat, survey, easement, amendment, and transfer involving my parcel and the Laurel Creek Common area for the last 20 years. The clerk, a woman maybe in her late 50s with red reading glasses and a voice like warm sandpaper, glanced at me and asked, "Rough morning?" I exhaled. You could say that. She took pity on me, I think. Or maybe she just liked a good neighborhood disaster. Either way, she helped me pull the original subdivision map, the subsequent HOA common area revisions, and my deed packet. We spread them across a long laminate table in the back room under bright institutional lights. And there it was, not vague, Not debatable. Not subject to interpretation. Clean lines. Clear measurements. My side yard sat entirely within my lot boundary. The HOA's common area ended 6 feet before the place where their spray paint began. There was a drainage easement farther downhill, yes, but it was narrow, utility-specific, and nowhere near broad enough to justify excavation for a pool terrace. Celeste hadn't just bent the truth. She had jumped over it in heels. The clerk tapped the plat with one capped pen. Unless they've got some unrecorded side agreement, which would be odd and still messy, this is your land. I stared at the line so long it blurred. Relief hit first, then anger all over again, hot and fresh. Can I get certified copies of everything? I asked. You can, she said. And honey, you should. I left with a fat envelope of documents and drove straight to an attorney named Rebecca Vance. I knew of her through a contractor friend. Sharp, expensive, no patience for neighborhood tyrants. Her office sat above a bakery downtown, and when I walked in, the hallway smelled like cinnamon and butter, which felt almost offensive considering my day. How could the world smell like pastries when my life smelled like diesel and dirt? Rebecca fit me in because I used one magic phrase on the phone: active property destruction. By 3 that afternoon, I was in her office while rain started tapping the window. She reviewed the photos first, then the certified plat, then my deed. She asked clean, direct questions in a voice that made panic straighten its spine. Did anyone sign permission? No. Any notice expressly naming your parcel? No. Any prior dispute with the HOA over this strip? Yes. Ah, she said and leaned back. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about Celeste Harrow moving into Laurel Creek 2 years earlier and acting like she had been appointed empress by a panel of insecure gods. I told her about the petty violation letters over trash can placement, mailbox paint shade, porch seating visual clutter, and my truck parked in my own driveway during a kitchen renovation. I told her how the real war began when I refused to remove the pollinator garden along my side yard because Celeste claimed it looked unstructured. Unstructured. God forbid nature fail to resemble a resort brochure. I told Rebecca how Celeste had been pushing for a luxury pool behind the clubhouse for months, because she wanted Laurel Creek to compete with premium communities in the region. Translation: she wanted prettier listing photos, higher dues, and her name attached to something flashy. The clubhouse lot, however, wasn't large enough for the version she wanted unless she extended the deck, retaining wall, and filtration access onto the outer edge of my parcel. I knew because I had seen one preliminary concept sketch in a board packet one neighbor leaked to me. At the time, I assumed they were dreaming big and would get corrected by someone sober. Apparently, sobriety never showed up to the meeting. Rebecca listened without interrupting, then folded her hands. Anthony, this is good. I blinked. Good. For you, she said. Terrible for them. That was the first time all day I almost cried. Not because I'm fragile. Not because men can't cry. Forget that nonsense. I almost cried because after hours of feeling invaded and off balance and weirdly helpless on my own property, one competent person looked at the facts and said, clearly, they did not get to do this. Rebecca moved fast. By that evening, she had sent a preservation of evidence letter to the HOA, their contractor, and their landscaping subcontractor. No further alteration. No deletion of emails, texts, approvals, board minutes, plans, invoices, or photographs. The next morning, she filed for emergency injunctive relief and damages. Trespass, property damage, private nuisance, seek full restoration, seek fees if bad faith could be shown. And because she had a mean streak when warranted, she also sent a notice to the contractor's insurer. That got attention. Then came the neighborhood theater. You ever notice how fast a suburban rumor spreads when wealth and embarrassment are involved? By day 2, people were pretending to walk their dogs past my house just to stare at the trench. By day 3, someone had posted drone footage from above, my torn-up yard next to the untouched clubhouse lawn, and the comments exploded in the community Facebook group. Some people defended the HOA blindly, because there are always people who'd rather trust authority than evidence. But others started asking obvious questions. Why was the excavation outside the clubhouse parcel? Why hadn't homeowners been shown the full site map? Why did the board approve construction before confirming boundaries? Why was there no county permit posted? That last one mattered more than anything. Because no permit had been posted. Rebecca pulled the county permit log. No approved pool construction permit for the exact scope that had begun. There had been an application draft, yes. Preliminary review incomplete, but no final authorization to excavate. When she told me that over the phone, I sat down so abruptly on my porch step I nearly missed it. No permit, I repeated. No final permit, she said. And the submitted site sketch appears to use an older boundary overlay. What does that mean? It means, she said, crisp as glass. Someone either cut corners at a reckless level or submitted materially misleading information. The world changed shape after that. Before, it had felt like one of those gray HOA nightmares where they make life miserable in ways too petty for anyone to care about. After the permit issue surfaced, it became something else, something with exposure. Liability, public record, insurance, judicial irritation. The kind of thing even smug board members lose sleep over. Still, sleep and I were no longer on speaking terms. At night, I kept hearing the excavator. Even when the yard was dark and still, I could hear that hydraulic whine in my head. I'd step onto the porch in the cool dark and stare at the wound beside the house. Rain had filled the bottom of the trench, turning it into a strip of black reflective water. My mother's broken stepping stones sat stacked near the fence like bones waiting for identification. I'd breathe in, breathe out, and feel grief ambush me sideways. It wasn't just land. People who say, it's just a yard, have never loved a place enough to pour memory into the ground. My mother and I planted those beds after my father died. She said gardens were proof that grief could still make room for color. Corny? Maybe, but she was right. Every spring that side yard came alive in layers, peonies first, then salvia, then the soft white flocks crawling over the stones. Bees, wind chimes, light through the maple leaves. After she was gone, I kept it because taking care of it felt like continuing a conversation. And Celeste, with her clipboard and her pool dreams, had torn straight through that conversation before sunrise. That thought made me dangerous. Not reckless, not stupid. Dangerous in the calm way, the documented way. I started building a timeline with obsessive precision. Emails, violation notices from prior months, screenshots from the HOA portal, photos with timestamps, names of every worker present, police incident number, a spreadsheet of damages. I even wrote down what Celeste had said word for word as best I could remember. Community enhancement plan, available for improvement. Don't make this theatrical. The human mind forgets fast when emotion runs hot. So I pinned every detail down like evidence under glass. Then one small miracle happened. A neighbor named Nina came to my door around dusk 3 days after the excavation. I knew her by sight, mid-30s, usually running in the mornings, polite but private. She stood on the porch hugging a cardigan closed against the cold, eyes darting like she hated conflict. I think I have something you need, she said. What she had was better than I dreamed. She had attended the HOA board meeting where the pool vote happened. She'd logged in by video because she was homesick. And while the official minutes later posted online were vague, her laptop had auto-recorded part of the meeting because she had been using a note-taking extension for another project. She wasn't sure how much audio it captured. She only knew that after seeing the trench in my yard. She went back and checked. We sat at my kitchen table while the recording played. The sound quality was bad, tinny, echoed, but voices were clear enough. Board discussion, budget chatter, someone worrying about footprint limitations. Then Celeste, unmistakable, saying, "The side strip beside Anthony's lot is essentially dead space and he's not going to cooperate if we ask. So we move under common area interpretation and clean it up later if needed." I went cold all the way down my back. Another voice, male, nervous, said, "Do we actually have the line on that?" Celeste answered, "The old overlay shows enough ambiguity. By the time he complains, the excavation will already be underway. No judge is going to order a half-built pool removed." No judge is going to order a half-built pool removed. Rebecca was silent for a full 5 seconds when I sent her the clip. Then she said, softly, almost reverently, "Well, that's spectacularly stupid." I laughed for the first time in days. Came out wild and exhausted and a little broken, but it was laughter. The emergency hearing was set for the following week. If you've never been inside a courtroom over something that feels both absurdly domestic and deeply personal, it's a surreal experience. People think court always looks cinematic, booming voices, dramatic confessions, shocking reveals. Most of the time it's fluorescent lights, polished wood, chilly air, and adults pretending emotion is irrelevant while emotion drives every heartbeat in the room. I wore a charcoal suit I hadn't used since my cousin's funeral. My hands were freezing even though the room wasn't cold. Celeste sat with the HOA attorney in a cream blazer, posture perfect, looking offended to be there at all. The contractor had separate counsel. Rebecca sat beside me calm as stone, flipping tabs in a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. The judge, an older woman with silver hair and the kind of eyes that could peel varnish off lies, listened without theatrics. Rebecca led with the boundary documents, certified plat, date, permit status, photos of the active excavation, police pause. Then she introduced the damage estimates and restoration expert affidavit showing what it would take to restore the grade, irrigation, hardscape, and planting beds. The HOA attorney argued misunderstanding, good faith reliance on existing site concepts, community benefit, no completed structure yet, no irreparable harm if parties worked cooperatively toward a land use compromise. A land use compromise on my land. Amazing. Then Rebecca asked to play the audio. The judge allowed it. That room got very quiet. Even through the crappy speakers, Celeste's voice cut through clean enough. He's not going to cooperate if we ask. Move under common area interpretation. Clean it up later. No judge is going to order a half-built pool removed. You could feel the air change. Celeste's attorney shifted in his chair. Celeste herself didn't move for a second. Just sat there with her face drained of color, her eyes fixed forward like if she remained absolutely still maybe reality would pass over her. The judge listened to the clip twice. When she finally spoke, her voice was measured, but there was steel in it. She said the recording, combined with the certified boundary documents and the lack of completed permitting, strongly suggested deliberate action taken in reckless disregard of clear property ownership. She granted the injunction immediately. No further entry. No continuation of pool-related work affecting my parcel. Preservation of all evidence. Expedited discovery. Then she looked directly at the HOA table and said the sentence that carried me through the next month like a lantern in a storm. Self-help trespass dressed up as community planning is still trespass. I wanted to stand up and cheer. I didn't, obviously. Courtroom decorum and all that. But inside I was on my feet. After the hearing, reporters didn't swarm us or anything dramatic. This wasn't a murder case. It was county-level civil court in a prosperous suburb. But word spread anyway, because wealthy neighborhoods treat scandal like oxygen. Within 48 hours, local real estate gossip pages were talking about the Laurel Creek pool debacle. Homeowners started demanding board transparency. One board member resigned for personal reasons. Another claimed he had relied on Celeste's representations regarding the boundary. Funny how quickly loyalty dies when exposure grows teeth. Discovery was a bloodbath for them. Emails showed Celeste had been warned twice by the project designer that the expanded footprint might cross onto a private lot unless a new boundary survey was ordered. She replied, "The owner is oppositional and surveys delay momentum. Proceed with conceptual alignment and will correct on the back end if it becomes an issue." Correct on the back end if it becomes an issue. There were texts too. Little ugly gems. Celeste to another board member. "Anthony acts like his wildflower patch is sacred ground LOL. Another. "He doesn't own the neighborhood aesthetic." Another, "After I received a violation notice months earlier." Some people only respond when pressure is applied. I read those messages in Rebecca's office with my jaw so tight it hurt. Part of me wanted to smash something. Another part just felt tired. Deep old tired. The kind you feel when you realize someone has been looking at your home. Not as a home, not as memory, not as a life, but as an obstacle. The HOA tried mediation before trial. Of course they did. Once their insurer got a look at the audio, the permit issue, and the internal emails, suddenly compromise sounded attractive. Their first offer covered basic landscaping repair and goodwill compensation, if I'd grant a narrow easement for a reduced pool deck expansion. I actually laughed in the mediator's conference room. Let me get this straight, I said. You tore up my yard without permission, mocked me in writing, gambled that a judge wouldn't stop you, and now you want me to reward that with an easement. Celeste's attorney started to answer. I held up a hand. No, I'm asking because I want to hear how insane that sounds out loud. Rebecca hid her smile behind a water glass. We did not settle that day. Trial came 6 weeks later. By then winter had started to thin the trees, and my damaged yard looked even sadder under hard pale light. I kept telling myself, hold on until someone with legal authority says this wasn't okay. Hold on until the world aligns with the obvious. At trial, I testified about waking up to the excavation, about the garden, about prior conflicts, about the harm. I tried to stay composed, but when I described planting the peonies with my mother, my voice caught. I hated that. Then again, maybe I didn't, because it was true. Damage is never just physical when someone violates a place you love. The contractor testified that he relied on the HOA's representations and did not independently verify boundary lines before beginning excavation. Not great for him, but worse for Celeste. The designer testified he raised concern about the footprint. The county permit clerk testified final approval had not been issued for the work performed. Nina testified about the meeting recording and how it was captured. Then Celeste took the stand. Watching entitled people testify is a strange experience. At first, they often believe charm will save them. Then certainty. Then indignation. Celeste moved through all three. She claimed she believed in good faith that the strip fell within a disputed buffer. She claimed she acted for community benefit. She claimed the remarks on the recording were taken out of context. Rebecca stood for cross-examination and became, in that moment, the most terrifying woman I had ever admired. She walked Celeste through the certified plat, through the email's warning of a boundary issue, through the missing permit, through the text messages mocking my yard, through each phrase on the recording. He's not going to cooperate if we ask. Why would she say that if she thought HOA authority was clear? No answer that sounded human. Clean it up later if needed. What exactly did clean it up mean? A stumble. No judge is going to order a half-built pool removed. Why discuss judges before excavation had begun? Celeste tried to say she was speaking casually. Rebecca let silence sit there until it burned. Then came the kill shot. Ms. Harrow, Rebecca said, isn't it true that you chose to begin excavation at sunrise because you believed visible progress would make reversal less likely? Celeste looked toward her attorney. The judge said, you may answer. A long pause. The courtroom HVAC hummed softly overhead. Somewhere a chair creaked. I could hear my own breathing. Celeste finally said, I believed once residents saw the vision, objections would lessen. Not yes, but yes. Rebecca nodded once and sat down. I swear the whole room understood. The ruling came 2 weeks later. I was in Rebecca's office when the call arrived. Outside, rain streaked the windows gray, and the bakery downstairs was sending up that same cinnamon smell as the first day. I remember every detail because the body stores relief with obscene precision. Rebecca answered, listened, then put the judge's clerk on speaker. The court found in my favor. Not partially, not politely, thoroughly. The order held that the HOA had trespassed willfully, caused property damage, and acted with reckless disregard for clear boundary records. The court ordered full restoration of my yard to substantially equivalent pre-damage condition at the HOA's expense, under supervision of mutually approved restoration professionals, with the HOA barred from asserting any development rights over my parcel absent written consent. It awarded damages for property loss, attorney's fees in significant part, and costs associated with expert review. It also noted the board's conduct as a factor supporting heightened equitable relief. Court forced them to restore it. Those exact words weren't in the ruling, obviously. Courts use drier language, but that was the reality. They dug it up. The court made them put it back. I sat there after the call ended with both hands over my mouth. Rebecca smiled a little. You okay? I laughed and cried at the same time, which is a ridiculous experience, by the way. 0 stars. Very messy. I shook my head. I'm so tired. I know, she said. No grand speech. No cinematic wisdom. Just I know. Somehow that cracked me open more than anything. Restoration began in late winter. Not the fake quick fix kind either. Real restoration. Soil testing. Regrading. Replacement of the damaged irrigation lines. Reconstruction of the stone path using salvaged pieces where possible and matched stone where not. Removal of compacted machine rutting. New topsoil layered and settled correctly. Replanting plans based on photos from prior seasons. I had more documentation of my yard than some people have of their own children, so the restoration horticulturist could map it almost bed by bed. The HOA had to pay. Every invoice, every hour, every truckload, every miserable cent Celeste did not supervise. By then she had resigned under pressure, though the board tried to package it as a transition. The homeowners were furious over the lawsuit costs and special assessment exposure. Suddenly that luxury pool didn't sound like prestige. It sounded like stupidity with a waterfall feature. I did see Celeste one last time. It was early March, windy and bright, and I was standing near the rebuilt garden border while a crew reset the last run of stone. A black SUV pulled over near the clubhouse. Celeste stepped out alone. No sunglasses this time. No clipboard. She walked halfway toward my yard and stopped at the property line like it was electrified. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The breeze moved the loose hair around her face. She looked older. Smaller, somehow. Not humbled exactly. Just diminished by consequence. I suppose you're pleased, she said. I looked at the torn-up section that was finally becoming a garden again. The dark new soil. The careful spacing of early perennials. The path returning inch by inch. No, I said. Pleased would have been you never touching it. She swallowed. Then she said something I'll never forget. It got bigger than I intended.
I stared at her, honestly amazed.
Even then, even after the ruling, after the recording, after the evidence, after the cost and humiliation, she still talked about intent like it was a shelter. Like outcomes didn't matter if she hadn't pictured them clearly enough. You stood in my yard while they tore it apart, I said. How much bigger did you need it to get? Her face hardened at that. She turned and walked away without another word. Good. Spring came slowly, then all at once. First the ground softened. Then tiny green blades pushed through where everything had looked dead. The replacement peonies took hold. The salvias leaned into the sun. Bees came back before I expected them to, bumbling and purposeful, like small miracles with wings. The wind spinner my niece helped me choose, new one, copper again, turned in the afternoon light beside the porch. It wasn't identical. I don't think places ever return exactly after violence. But it was alive. It was mine. And that mattered. One evening in April, my niece Lily came over with a paper cup of ice cream twice the size of her hand and sat cross-legged on the porch with me. She was 8, observant as a hawk, and had followed the whole saga in the child way. Missing legal nuance, catching emotional truth. She looked at the garden for a long time and asked, "Does it still count if it had to be redone?" I turned to her. "What do you mean?" She shrugged. "Like grandma's flowers. If they got messed up and then fixed, is it still the same love?" That question. God, kids walk straight into the center of things adults circle for years. I looked out at the side yard where the evening sun was washing everything gold. The new blossoms were smaller. The stones looked cleaner than before. The maple branches clicked softly overhead in the breeze. Somewhere down the street, a lawnmower droned. Closer by, bees hummed over the lavender. Life making sound again. Yeah, I said finally. It still counts. Because you put it back? Because we didn't let somebody else decide it was disposable. She nodded like that made perfect sense, and maybe it did. By summer, the yard was beautiful again. Not brochure beautiful, better, human beautiful, a little uneven in spots, full of texture, full of return. The side path curved through the beds the way it used to. The restored soil held. The irrigation worked. My mother's old cast-iron bench, cleaned and reset, sat beneath the maple where afternoon shade fell cool and blue. Sometimes I'd sit there with coffee and just listen, to the sprinklers ticking, to leaves moving, to the ordinary peace that had nearly been taken from me by people who thought money and paperwork and momentum could erase a boundary. They were wrong, and maybe that's the part that still catches in my chest when I think about it. Not the win exactly, not even the court order. There are people in the world who will look at your quiet little corner of life and decide it's convenient for them to take. They'll tell themselves stories while doing it. They'll call it progress, community benefit, improvement, vision. They'll smile. They'll bring clipboards. They'll start early. They'll count on your confusion. They'll count on your exhaustion. They'll count on the idea that once enough damage is done, you'll surrender because restoration feels too hard. Don't take the pictures. Pull the records. Find the lawyer. Learn the line. Hold the line. Let them hear the scrape of consequence coming for them, one clean document at a time. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive like lightning. Sometimes it sounds like a judge calmly reading an order while the person who trespassed sits frozen in tailored clothes. Sometimes it looks like certified plats spread across a table under fluorescent lights. Sometimes it smells like wet dirt, printer toner, and spring after rain. And sometimes, if you keep going, it blooms.